Metal Gear Solid 3 is the greatest American-inspired Japanese movie game that I've ever played, and if you've never had the privilege of playing a Metal Gear Solid title, that statement will make a lot more sense to you as we go throughout this video.
What the? I'm seeing things.
In this video, we're going to unwrap one of gaming's most iconic and arguably most important pieces of media to come from the PlayStation 2. If for no other reason than the fact that they fit a game this massive on a PS2 disc and it somehow didn't make the PS2 catch on fire. But before we jump into Metal Gear Solid 3, I think it's important that we take a look at what the Metal Gear Solid series actually is. In 1987, a little video game computer known as the MSX, not to be confused with the NSX, I know they're really similar, needed a military action game, but it had a little bit of a problem. The hardware just couldn't handle a big action game with open areas and a ton of enemies on screen. But this is where Hideo Kojima stepped in. He had a little bit of game experience under his belt, but for all intents and purposes, he was walking into uncharted territory. He decided to turn his action game into a slower paced stealth action game that focused more on strategy and narrative storytelling. As it turns out, there was a pretty big audience for a game like that over here in the West, selling over 1 million copies, which was pretty big at the time. From that point on, Kojima would be a household name when it came to the Metal Gear series, but it's kind of funny that it actually turned out that way. Kojima originally didn't even want to work with the MSX, and Konami only moved him to working on Metal Gear due to his previous projects not working out. In the following decade, after the release of Metal Gear 2 for the MSX, Metal Gear Solid would be the first game in the series built from the ground up on the PlayStation as a flagship title. Which would also be my first exposure to the series as a kid, playing the demo disc in the Walmart or whatever, Circuit City or Best Buy or FYE. No, it wasn't FYE. So I had this media center that was like on the south side of my city, and it had like a happy face and a sad face like the cinema masks, and it was like a media center store. I remember seeing the Dreamcast in there, and I'm going on a bit of a tangent. I played the Metal Gear Solid demo in the store. That was my exposure to it as a kid. Metal Gear Solid would double down on the stealth action elements that popularized the series, but now take place in a 3D playground. Sporting a cinematic introduction, new ways to interact with the environment, and incredible visuals for the time, it was clear that this was a huge leap for the series. But in my opinion, the biggest upgrade of all had to be the storytelling.
I'm trying to sneak around, but I'm dummy thick, and the clap of my ass cheeks keeps alerting the guards.
While the new visuals made it more cinematic than ever, the narrative is what really immersed you into Metal Gear Solid. The progressive dialogue that you got as the story unfolded was genuinely mind-blowing at the time and unlike anything else that was on the platform. Major, we've incorrectly installed the VR mission. There's no enemies in this level. It proved that video games could not only tell a cinematic story, but immerse you into the shoes of the character unlike any other medium. As history shows, Metal Gear Solid 2 released on the next generation to commercial and critical success, proving once again that the series would be a mainstay.
What's wrong with Snake?
Just a precaution. You are now designated Raiden.
It was this perfect fusion of Western-style media and gameplay with the quirks and finesse you would only find in Japanese media. It continued the story of the first game while also taking advantage of next-gen technology to provide an even deeper experience. This meant new gameplay elements like being able to aim in the first person or having enemies that actually needed to be hidden after being knocked out, as well as doubling down on the cinematic presentation with the cutscenes. Metal Gear Solid 2 was more impressive than ever, but despite the success in continuing the story, Kojima had his eyes set on something a little bit different, the origin story. After the success of bringing the series into the next gen, Kojima knew that this would be the perfect time for a fresh take on the series. This brings us to Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater. This tastes like fucking shit. What would at the time be considered by Kojima as the swan song of the series, it was positioning itself to be a true successor. Or predecessor? Successor predecessor? Dry ass mouth from drinking this aspartame bullshit.
Snake, what have you done? You changed the future. You've created a time paradox.
Taking everything that they learned from creating Metal Gear Solid 2, the team would end up creating a game that not only exceeded its predecessor in basically every way, but would also land itself in the history books. This is widely considered to be the best game in the series, as well as an ideal starting point for newcomers. The good thing about Snake Eater is that you don't need to have any prior knowledge of the previous games to jump in.
Commencing virtuous mission now.
That's not to say you won't be treated to any nods or Easter eggs to the previous titles if you do, which there are many.
Ah, your Rykov disguise has turned out nicely.
Yeah, not even his own mother could tell the difference.
Indeed, you're starting to irritate me already.
Why? This look should make me more popular.
I wouldn't bet on it.
But it's by no means essential to enjoy this game. Snake Eater takes place in the Cold War era, way before the events of the previous games. You play as Jack, aka Snake, or Naked Snake for the mission, and you're on a mission to save the world from international war.
Put that thing away, you'll spoil my drink.
Similar to the previous games, you'll do this by taking down a select number of high-profile enemies and cinematic boss battles. Alright, Snake, I have one bullet in this chamber. We're gonna play Russian roulette. Paced between sandbox-style gameplay sections and a cinematic story being told through cutscenes as well as your codec, a device you'll use to chat with your remote team throughout the game.
I visited you in the hospital. You were still unconscious, though.
Then you must have seen me naked.
Just like the previous titles, this is a story of espionage and survival. There's a lot of references to historically accurate events and political figures that will be weaved in with some fiction just for the entertainment value. This is a story of fiction, but weaving in those realistic elements give it a feeling that it's something that really could happen at any time in the real world. You'll have to use all the tools that you're given to infiltrate the enemy's base of operations and complete your mission. Kojima didn't want this to be another basic entry in the series, however. He wanted to create a realistic environment unlike anything else seen in gaming at the time, and he decided that this could only be achieved by starting you off in the wilderness.
What, you don't like snakes?
What do you mean?
You've eaten one before, haven't you?
Oh shit, I killed him. Snake Eater starts off by having you skydive into a fictional region somewhere in the Middle East, closer to Russia. Am I gonna get demonetized for saying the R word? This would provide you with a mountainous region full of lush foliage, hidden laboratories, and military bases. When you land, you end up in the middle of a jungle with virtually nothing to your person. This time it's not about just going undetected, it's about survival.
You can use either your tranquilizer gun or your knife to hunt.
My only weapon is a Mark 22 Hush Puppy tranquilizer gun?
My only weapon is a PS3 controller strapped to a f***ing microphone. You'll have no choice but to live off of the land by hunting for your own food to keep up your stamina, as well as staying undetected by blending into your environment. Even if living off the land involves you coming across a little product placement. Oh my god. This is the best thing I've ever eaten. Holy shit. Snake, you can't eat that. You're going to create a time paradox. I think calorie mates are still really big in Japan and look exactly the same as they do in the game today, but that's something we don't really get here in the West, which is probably why if you look at Amazon reviews for calorie mates, they always reference the game. A biscuit, huh? The previous games encourage staying hidden, but this time it's also about adapting to your surroundings.
This is a stealth mission. Got that?
Where's he at?
With the variety of locations in Metal Gear Solid 3, you'll have to change up your camo to better match with your environment. If you don't, you might just end up a walking target, which you won't want to be, because you'll have to heal any wounds from the damage you take. These new gameplay elements, opening cinematics, and improved graphical fidelity really set the tone for what's to come.
Now, go home.
Speaking of graphical fidelity, the version that I'm playing is the HD remaster, but outside of a few texture and lighting changes, this is essentially the exact same game. I keep forgetting that this was a PS2 game because it looks that damn good. It might as well be a PS3 title.
Incredible.
Grass is dense and provides you with cover from enemies, and the landscape realistically changes altitude as you move through each area. It's heavily populated with foliage, rock formations, and mountains that will require you to strategize how you decide to traverse them, because you'll have to remain hidden from patrols while occasionally watching out for obstacles like claymores and landmines. This is of course accompanied by fantastic sound design that really makes you feel like you're surviving in the heart of a jungle. The musical score is great too, with intense music that'll dynamically change anytime you're encountering enemies. And all of these immersive elements lend to a game that feels way ahead of its time. That being said, I got reminded that this was a PS2 game pretty quickly when it came down to the controls. They aren't anywhere near as clunky as the PS1 tank controls, but they take some getting used to. Movement is pretty straightforward, but it starts to get jank when you realize that doing any action requires you to stop moving. Outside of running while hip firing, sneaking, climbing, and weapon combat all have dedicated buttons that require you to stop moving in order to do something like crawl or aim. You also don't aim and shoot like in a modern game. First, you have to bring up your weapon that's in your quick access menu via the right trigger. Then you hold L1 to go into first person mode, and if it's a pistol, you'll hold the trigger button to aim down sights until it's released, which will shoot it.
Judo, eh?
You can't move while aiming down sights, and if you have some weapons like the sniper equipped, you won't be able to move at all until you unequip them, which makes the combat scenarios where you're constantly trying to move around feel pretty clunky. And this isn't even mentioning the pressure sensitive buttons. Yeah, if you didn't know about this one, I wouldn't blame you, because I didn't realize how to use this correctly until like 3/4 into the game. Major, I need a weapon. My PS3 controller isn't firing any bullets. But both the PS2 and PS3 controllers have these pressure sensitive face buttons that just complicate the controls even more.
Taking off from a lake is trickier than it looks.
You slightly press the fire button down to aim weapons and fully press it to shoot them. The same control scheme applies to the distance you want to throw grenades, like hold it lightly to lightly throw it, or fully hold it to sling that bitch. You can sort of feel the difference in the resistance of the button if you know to look for it, but you could also just completely miss this if you didn't understand how it worked. Like if you didn't know any better, you would never guess that these buttons were pressure sensitive. A staple of the Metal Gear Solid series is that the team always finds creative ways to utilize the hardware. And on paper, using the same button to aim and fire seems like a neat concept. You know, put your finger on the trigger to prepare it, and then push it all the way down to pull the trigger. But in practice, it probably could have been skipped, considering that later this did get released on Xbox, Vita, and 3DS no problems, but brownie points for creativity.
Just my imagination.
Despite the controls, the gameplay itself is a treat. Your objectives typically consist of going into an area undetected and taking a specific person out or retrieving some sort of data, but you aren't told exactly how to do it.
But there were still so many things I wanted you to teach me.
You're given a toolbox of different items to assist you, both lethal and non-lethal. And the levels consist of these open, almost sandbox-like environments for you to use them in.
Fear effect, huh? This'll keep him busy for 30 hours. Huh. Must have been the wind.
Despite the linear story, you aren't really forced to play a certain way. Staying stealthy is ideal because the soldiers will be quick to call in reinforcements if you get spotted or something seems a little bit off, but you're free to play however you want. You can attempt to speed run past enemies, go for meme kills, run around with a cardboard box on your head, or attempt a non-lethal run, which the game will actually reward you for doing. It'll also reward you for taking your time with the game, hiding little Easter eggs or weapons all around the level that you can totally miss if you're just trying to blow through it.
It's a Chinese Type 17 pistol. Around here, even that's hard to come by.
If you want to kill every enemy in your path, you can do that. Or you can use a tranquilizer gun to put them to sleep. You have a variety of stuns, smoke, and EMP grenades you can use, not to mention your lethal explosives like your grenades and TNT, as well as sniper rifles, pistols that can be used with and without a suppressor, assault rifles, and more miscellaneous weapons at your disposal. Some of these weapons will be harder to find than others, and some will only be available to you if you're playing a certain way, aka non-lethal. You can also just ditch the weapon contact for CQC hand-to-hand chokeholds, punches, kicks, and throws to disable your threats. Do a barrel roll! The choice to play aggressive, passive, or stealthy is really in your hands. This also applies to the boss battles.
I will give you fear such as you've never experienced before.
I'm reporting you to the IRS.
They're peppered throughout the entire story, and they're pretty fun, outside of the times that they'll have you wanting to break your controller. If you can manage to persevere these boss battles as well as do them non-lethally, you'll get rewarded with special gear to carry throughout the game, which I didn't realize until I had already beaten it with extreme violence. Oops. All of this gameplay freedom gives Snake Eater a lot of replay value and depth that you won't find in even a lot of games today. I promise you that if you beat an area and then watch a playthrough of it, somebody's gonna be doing something that you didn't even know was possible in the game. Wait, why didn't anybody tell me that you could eat snakes in this game? I'm still learning about unlockables that I missed and hearing new lines of dialogue despite the fact that I've beaten this game twice. And I think that's just a testament to how much detail is actually in this game. Every Metal Gear Solid has this obsessive level of detail and Snake Eater is no exception.
The feeding ramp is polished to a mirror sheen. The slide's been reinforced, and the interlock with the frame is tightened for added precision.
You have a radio codec that you can access at any time to talk to your squad members that are watching the mission from a distance, and these conversations will change depending where you're at in the story. Hey, Snake, you should try eating the snakes, dude. They taste like snake. These conversations can be mission specific depending on what area you're in at the time, or they can just offer a nice break from the gameplay stress.
What exactly don't you like about James Bond? I mean, is it the fantastic gadgets, the cars, the guns?
Major,
Snake, wouldn't you like to have a gun shaped like a pen?
what good is a pen gonna do me in the jungle? I'd look like a fool.
Then what about a snake-shaped gun? You could make it look like you're grappling with a giant snake and then get a shot in on the enemy while they're distracted. Ha!
Okay, now you're being ridiculous.
Even a task as simple as saving your game isn't exempt from this. You save your game by talking to your medical assistant in the codec who will just casually have a conversation with you about films she's seen, which is definitely a nod to Kojima's film obsession.
When the going gets tough, movies can save your life.
なんで映画とか小説がなければ僕はもしかしたら途中で断念してるかもしれませんし、夢を捨てているかもしれませんし、だからそういう意味では感謝をしてるので。
On another note about the codec, Metal Gear Solid 3 is actually very smart about how it helps you out if you're getting lost in the game. Obviously, in this game there's a big push for immersion. There's no objective markers or waypoints, so what happens when your ADD ass gets lost during a mission, like me? Well, one of your companions on the radio that you can access at any time will explain what to do organically. The medic will give you advice on healing as well as just words of general encouragement while you're in the middle of a fight.
That's the spirit, Snake.
You have a weapons expert that'll kind of explain what the enemy's using and how to combat it.
Sounds like the Cobra unit's members' names came from the specific emotions they each carry into battle.
And then you have the Major, which is your operations leader that can give you advice on where you're going or what you should be doing at any given time.
You're a ghost, Snake, in every sense of the word.
Sometimes these conversations will end up putting a big X on the map so when you go to check it, you can find out where to go. Wait a minute, we don't have GPS infinite yet. How do you guys know my location? It's a very smart way to keep you immersed in the world and help you out without necessarily telling you directly where to go or what to do.
Where can I see the original?
You'll just have to go to Japan.
Again, this is stuff that you can just totally miss, but the effort to put this amount of dialogue into the game is just one of the ways that Snake Eater gets you immersed in that story.
You got some instant noodles, huh?
Instant noodles.
Uh-huh.
Another way that the story is brought into the game is obviously with the cutscenes, and to say you're gonna be seeing a lot of them would, I think that'd be an understatement, huh?
This bitch is wearing perfume.
Metal Gear Solid 4 might hold the record for the longest video game cutscene, but I'm almost positive that Metal Gear Solid 3 is a running contender for the longest playable movie.
Want some?
Kojima is infamously known for his love of movies.
Have you seen Dr. Strangelove or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb?
What?
Unlike most games from the PlayStation generation, Metal Gear Solid 1 stood out for its cinematic flair that made you feel like you were playing a movie. So it should be no surprise that this tradition carried over tenfold to the future games like Snake Eater.
I see.
No, don't!
If you aren't familiar with the series, this will definitely come as a surprise to you. There are moments in this game where you'll watch a cutscene, have about 5 minutes of gameplay, and then directly jump into another cutscene. And these aren't just small little cutscenes, oh no. These cutscenes can last well over 10 minutes.
45, huh? Feeding ramp is polished to a mirror, the slide's been reinforced, and the interlock with the frame is tightened for added sight system as original too. Thumb safety is extended to make it easier on the long type trigger with non-slip ring hammer. Base of the trigger guard's been filed down for a higher, and not only that.
The cutscenes even have their own cutscenes because right after you watch one, it'll play another segment consisting of some more lore narrated over some stock footage. The gameplay is great, but you're essentially playing a 20-hour movie.
One of these 3 guns has a single bullet in it. I'm going to pull the triggers.
Supposedly the cutscenes make up for about 3.5 hours of the game, but I don't think that also accounts for the constant lore dumps or codec conversations that absolutely pad out that runtime.
Let's just say neither one of us is going to be made a national hero out of this.
I don't by any means think that this is a bad thing. They're very well done and they're a nice immersive break to some of the stressful gameplay moments, but you should definitely expect to set aside a few hours per session. If playing Call of Duty is like getting fast food on the way home from work, Metal Gear Solid is like a night out at a steakhouse. You're gonna sit down with it and spend some time with it. One thing that I don't think you'll be prepared for, however, is the actual story itself.
We'd been given a top-secret mission to locate and destroy enemy V2 rocket installations. I was pregnant.
I'm not even gonna pretend that I have a good understanding of the story in this game. Oh my god. Because anytime that I thought that I was getting a feel for where the story was going, I just ended up going down another rabbit hole.
I'll explain it before I kill you.
So on the surface, it may seem pretty simple. Your mission is to drop into the enemy HQ, rescue a captured scientist that's being used to create a weapon of mass destruction, and get out. But there's just one problem. A legendary soldier known as the Boss, who was also your mentor, has now taken side with the enemy. Now you have to go up against your lifelong partner, the Boss, as well as her personal team of legendary fighters known as the Cobra Unit. This will be the main driving force of your gameplay, so now you have the setup for the story, a great gameplay loop, and some awesome boss battles. But of course that's not where it stops.
I guess I'd better help you out.
It seems like there's a new character being introduced every hour, as well as motivations for the previous ones being there in the first place. If you've ever played a game and thought to yourself, wow, I really wish they would have fleshed this character out a little bit more, that won't be something you'll be saying while you're playing Metal Gear Solid.
Get the upper hand. I don't think I'm cut out for that mission.
Maybe if you change your codename to 00 Snake.
If they have a name come up in a cutscene, they're sure as hell gonna be important. The characters go on these long-winded tangents that just never seem to end.
It's been 5 years, 72 days, and 18 hours.
If the game introduces a character, you can bet your ass that you'll be spending half an hour hearing about their entire life story.
You sly dog! You got me monologuing! I can't believe it.
The entire story consists of these one more thing moments that'll absolutely throw you for a loop no matter how much you think you're paying attention.
It's a nice gun, I'll give you that. But the engraving gives you no tactical advantage whatsoever.
No tactical advantage whatsoever, huh? Can you do this, Snake? Can your 1911 do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? I think the best way that I can sum it up is that in Metal Gear Solid, you'll spend half the time wrongly predicting what's going to happen, and then the other half of the time confused about what happened previously.
To be honest with you, I'm tired.
It feels like the game is literally fighting with itself near the end to just keep lore dumping on you. Literally, even after the credits roll, it's still trying to expand on the characters and the plot points, despite the fact that you wrapped it up 20 minutes ago.
Yes.
But let's be honest, at the end of the day, that's probably what I love about it. I think that Metal Gear Solid 3 is definitely one of those games that deserves the modern remake treatment. It's worked for Dead Space, it's worked for Demon's Souls, it's worked for the Resident Evil series, so I definitely could see it working here.
Don't die on me yet.
It holds up incredibly well, so much so that it makes games coming out today actually look like a joke in comparison. I mean, can you seriously believe that this game looks like it came out almost 20 years ago now? Kojima and his team's obsessive attention to detail and efforts to bring a cinematic story into the video game world didn't go to waste. But that's not to say that Snake Eater isn't showing its age. The controls have to be one of the biggest places that it shows its age. Having to press a series of buttons to simply aim and shoot while also being forced to stand in place is just jank by modern standards. I also found myself constantly doing things that I didn't mean to, like leaping when I meant to crouch, not shooting the gun when I didn't press the button correctly, or pulling out a weapon when I meant to go for a stealth attack. The use button for some items were mapped to circle while others were mapped to square. square. You couldn't aim with rifles the same way that you could with pistols. These are things that you can get used to, but they definitely take some muscle memory.
I don't approve of your methods.
I also think that there's just a lot of room to expand the gameplay here in general. Technology has came a long way since 2004. No longer do we need these small maps that have to load in between sections. I think that you can see in certain areas, like the boss battle with the end, that this game painfully wanted to be one seamless environment.
That should stir things up a bit. You'd better hurry.
One feature that I almost forgot to even bring up is the multiplayer mode. There was a PvP mode bundled with the later release version of Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence that allowed players to take the CQC combat online. Of course, it's been all but abandoned and discontinued at this point, unfortunately, but that may be another opportunity for them to revisit in the remake. Of course, if it does come back, you can bet your ass that Konami's gonna monetize the shit out of it with day one microtransactions, but we can be hopeful. Of course, the other element to this even getting a remake at all would be the fact that there's definitely going to be no Kojima involvement in this project, but they got the blueprint. How hard could it be to really mess up?
We've only got one chance.
All of this confusing narrative, fun gameplay, and sheer replay value is wrapped up in a quirky Japanese package with a Western coat of paint that is unlike anything else you'll ever play.
Who's that?
The Metal Gear Solid series came at a time when creativity was encouraged and blank checks were plentiful. There was no day one patch or opportunity to sell consistent DLC, nor was there a blueprint for the perfect money printing AAA game formula. They had one shot to make a good game and they had to make it count. I don't know if we'll ever see another video game series as impactful as the Metal Gear Solid series again in modern times, but I'm just happy I got to live to see this one happen. Big thanks to Kojima Productions and all the members involved for basically changing the way we interact with video games, as well as a special mention to Yoshi Shinkawa for bringing these wild gameplay concepts to life with his beautiful artwork throughout the Metal Gear Solid series. Because, you know, they're watching this video for sure. Fun fact, Shinkawa still works with Kojima to this day on his Death Stranding projects. If you've never played Metal Gear Solid 3 or any of the games in the series, do yourself a favor and give them a shot. This game isn't part of that series. But before we end it here, I just want to formally thank you guys for watching the video. This is probably not only my favorite, but one of my biggest projects yet. You know, recording multiple games to give this brief synopsis before getting into the meat of the main video, collecting all the information, writing the scripts, getting the stuff for the skits in, recording the skits, putting it into the video, and then finding more stuff to change as the video goes along took quite a while. I've probably been working on this off and on for the past 3 weeks. It's been a hell of an undertaking, but we got it done. And we didn't get it done alone, because if it wasn't for the channel members, I probably wouldn't have been able to stomach buying the materials for the skits in this video, because let's face it, I probably spent more on that than I'm gonna actually get in return from the video itself. So Jose Burley, Scott, Burl Hurlbutt, Joking Bomb, Not a Clown 2, and Exeat, who has been a channel member for 17 months. My God, dude. Are we gonna have to start having channel member anniversaries, getting the cake and candles out? Man. Extended scenes for the skits in this video, as well as a Calorie Mate review, will be up for channel members soon. So if you wanna check that out, be sure to become a channel member so you can get in on all that, as well as all the other previous channel member content that the others have been enjoying for months now, like Exeat. 17 months. Anyways, I know we're dragging this on, but if you're still watching it by now, this is probably what you're into anyways. When it comes to these long form retrospectives, they obviously take a while, so I think I'm going to continue to space it out with some of this more short form discussion content that I've been doing. If you guys have any opinions on that or this video itself, drop a comment. I hope to see you in the next one. It's been Josh, aka T. Thanks for watching. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Later.